this. I'm really excited to have you on. Um,
Yeah,
and I was just going to say, it'd be great maybe if we just kick off if you just introduce yourself and who you are.
yeah. So I'm Jackie Cooper. I am the CEO of the Blockchain Legal Institute and also otherwise known as Crypto Mom 2.
You have to tell me why you're known as Crypto Mum. Where does that come from?
So not so long a story, but there might be a longer story as I start to tell it. I'm a mom and I have a wonderful daughter who's now 27 and doing great things. But when I first started my blockchain journey, which was about 8 years ago, someone said, "Oh, you're a crypto mom." And I said, "No, I really have to be crypto mom too, because Hester Pierce is crypto mom one, the first one, because the media dubbed her as that. And I really did not want to step on her toes." So
Oh, I didn't realize that that's what she'd been dubbed. That's cool. Oh, well, you're following her blazed trail then. That's wonderful.
exactly, she broke a lot of glass ceilings. And so, and being a spokesperson for those within the blockchain space. So I'm sort of doing this similar thing in terms of, promoting, educating, and making sure people have resources. So that way they can make the decision about what's best for their journey.
Yeah, that makes sense. Can you talk a bit about your journey then? Because you have a background in law. So what's your career journey been, and when did you first find out about this groundbreaking technology?
Yeah, so I started learning about the blockchain world about 8 years ago now. And my first step into this was with some difficulty, because I realized that even though I have a lot of education, it wasn't intuitive to me. So I needed some mentoring and help. And I found a woman in Scotland who actually had been in this space for a while. And she answered my questions in a very thorough way. So I felt comfortable with the information she was sharing. And she showed me how to open up my first wallet. I ended up, I am a Bitcoin miner and a node owner now. So I've taken, the step from the first wallet opening to now the tech side. But my first token that I bought was an altcoin. And in some ways, I'm very happy that that was my first experience, because it had an ecosystem. So I could see how it could be used to buy air or food or other objects. And as opposed to buying a token or a coin on a centralized exchange, I really saw the possibilities of what cryptocurrency could be as a currency. And when I learned about Bitcoin and the power of that decentralized currency, I realized the economic freedom that it could provide to people. So, again, I've had a long journey myself in terms of understanding the liquidity behind things, the risks behind things, and it's been very positive. But I've been scammed too. I've had situations too. So and through those lessons, I've been able to help others to kind of learn how to ask questions, to be able to be more astute as we kind of make these financial investment decisions.
Yeah, that makes sense. How did you end up starting the Blockchain Legal Institute? Is its jurisdiction, is it US wide? Is it global? Like what's the kind of geographical area that you're looking to cover with it?
Yeah, no, it is global. And for people who want to see it, we might share screen later. But basically, the Blockchain Legal Institute got started in May of 2023 because I'm the author of a series of books called the Bitcoin Cinderella. And the Bitcoin Cinderella and the Seven Dwarves was sponsored by CleanSpark and at the Miami conference, Bitcoin conference, so that way I could give it away. When I was at my booth giving it away, a young attorney came up to me and asked me for help and resources so she could start her legal practice in that area. And I realized there wasn't a centralized location for all these resources because we're in a decentralized space. So I with my co-founder, who's more on the tech side, I'm on the content side, did a 2-month hackathon. And in July, the Blockchain Legal Institute got kicked off, and it's designed not just for lawyers. I mean, CPAs can be on there, and women, men, individuals, students, all age groups. It's a resource for what's going on within news, artificial intelligence, Bitcoin, Ethereum, blockchain use cases, laws from the 50 states, laws from around the world, various associations. It really is a library. I mean, think of it as, it's only 5 months old, but it's rich with information from videos to publications, and it will become like the next Wikipedia blockchain. I mean, the support that I've been getting to provide resources behind it is really exciting. And it's to save people time sometimes too, because again, you don't always know where to go for resources. And there's such a diverse quality of resources out there. So there's like, there are some very great content resources, but then there are opinion-oriented resources. And you, like everything else, you have to look at, is it a primary source? It's just like when you went to a library many years ago, if you walk in the door and you see the books on the shelves, is it the Constitution of the United States, or is it someone writing about the various things that were written in the Constitution? You have to kind of think, okay, who it is and what are they talking about? And then you have to judge it, decipher it, and see, how does this apply to your life?
Interesting. Who contributes to it? Like, how do you maintain the database and keep it current?
So, great question. And there are uploads almost daily. We have a number of contributors from around the world and new individuals, from interns to actual professionals, who are contributing, and businesses as well. I have, over the last 8 years, and I tell the story, so if someone's also hearing the interview from, about, I have a spam email. And I call it spam. It's really not. It's wherever I sign up for a newsletter, because I only want that to hit one email. And so for the years that I've been doing my own personal research, I have a ton of information. And the Blockchain Legal Institute really is like the umbrella, so I have different hubs of newsletters and resources, but the Library of Congress is one of the resources that, I get information from. I get information from the UN, major organizations down to businesses that are shilling for themselves, but still have good content. And so you have to kind of discern to major news feeds, to agencies. So I am sometimes the choice of when to post, it depends upon the current events is happening so fast. So sometimes I choose to kind of sit and wait and see what the fallout is before I post. But sometimes I'm posting currently. So it really depends. And the laws in different countries, we have different partners in different parts of the world that are also contributing to the pages, because things have changed a lot, and on the
Yeah.
ground changing. So
Yeah, definitely. It's a real moving target, actually. It's interesting because you've got yeah, it's interesting because you've got a really broad insight then into what legislation looks like around the world. And you're obviously based in the US, but what's your sense of like the legislative landscape globally? Like, which regions do you think are doing really well in supporting and encouraging innovation within a good regulatory framework, and which ones do you think are lagging more?
So India is really growing right now, even though there's been some challenges within, the country in terms of their view of cryptocurrency and use. But there's been a lot of conversations and development, and they, as a tech country, are really training a lot of developers. So as a result of that, their government and those that are around it are really looking at, how do we frame the conversation to be supportive of business. We have Bermuda, which is a sandbox unto itself, that I visited, and I'm writing a book for them that will help talk about what they're doing. But you have the EU, which just passed the regulations dealing with artificial intelligence and a lot of other digital assets. And that impacts a huge number of countries. And then the question is, and actually not just their countries, but also the global, because anyone who does business within is going to have to be aware of the privacy issues and the cookies, and just if they are a certain size, they have certain obligations. If they are not, so the lawyers that are navigating this and the advisors really have to stay on top of it. I know that the Nordic community actually, we're one of our partners is the Nordic Blockchain Association, and in learning more about those that community, they had a lot of foresight even way before the EU. There were a lot of countries that were doing things, and even putting information on the blockchain with the idea of privacy and individual rights. So there's like these pockets of communities that even here in the United States, that are looking at and that are more progressive than others. And I'm not saying progressive like liberal or conservative, I'm saying in terms of technology progressive, to try to figure out how to stay ahead, but in alignment with what the technology is doing. Overseas and in Asia, I mean, you definitely have Singapore and some of those areas, but there are things that are going on in Korea and Vietnam. I mean, as the business community develops, Australia, I mean, I'm just thinking about how forward they were in terms of creating laws way before others. So I think it really depends upon the market, the business market, to say, okay, we can make it, it's always driven by money. We can make money from this, so we need the laws that will support this. And in the United States, which is where I'm based, we have lobbyists on either side. So really, it's just whoever has the strongest voice at the time that might end up creating the legislation. Whether or not I agree with it is a whole nother story. But so I believe in protecting consumers, but I also believe in allowing the freedom of choice for the entrepreneurs to succeed or fail, because even traditional businesses, startups fail. And you can invest in a startup, but it doesn't mean it's a scam. So, again, there's a different mindset, I think, when it comes to cryptocurrency and all those other businesses within the blockchain, just because of the media hype. So I think that kind of creates a different tone that people should be looking at every business the same way. It just happens that it's on an innovative technology platform as opposed to the content or service. So.
Yeah, yeah, that definitely makes sense. How do you think the US is faring? Because we're actually having this conversation a day after the ETFs actually started trading, and there was a big fanfare about it. And it's funny because I'm based in Canada, and Canada's had a Bitcoin ETF since February 2021. And I fully accept that the population is much smaller here, obviously, and I think US is nearly 10 times the size. But it's just interesting to me that there was so much fanfare about it for the US and so many expectations, and the build up was just going on forever. Um, and I think a lot of people didn't even realize that Canada had already had an ETF for like 3 years. And it just wasn't that momentous, I don't think. It was just like whatever. I mean, people were happy that it was brought out, but it didn't materially, I don't think, change, the Bitcoin landscape that much in certainly north of the US. So what do you think about the ETF approval and what its impact might be? And where do you think the US is in this kind of journey from a regulatory standpoint?
So I'm glad that products are approved. I think that some of our agencies in the US overstep what they should be doing. So I'm glad that happened. I think, again, our media in the US is always focused on controversy. So if they think that there's controversy going on, whether it's financial or violence, let's put it that way, they're going to play on it to get ratings, and that's not a good news model to have. I think that we need to be changing the tone of how we report. And years ago, it was more factual. Now it's more opinions. So even on the talk shows, it's more opinions. It's not like the news of the day. It's more news opinions of the day, editorial. But we've gotten away from facts, and I think that that's the problem. And that's why I think the hype happened, because and also I think it's education. People don't understand the nature of Bitcoin. They don't understand and that also comes back down to the agencies. Again, there's multiple definitions as to what a token is or what a cryptocurrency is. And so because of that controversy and confusion, it creates a different type of hype. And Bitcoin is very utilitarian. It's, it can be used in so many different ways. Being a Bitcoin miner, I appreciate the value of it, but it's like real estate. It goes up and down. But if you were to go, if I was to go to Canada and exchange my dollar for a different foreign currency, there's ups and downs in my foreign exchange trade there. When I go from the airport, and I find, okay, my dollar's only worth this value. Well, that's no different than a cryptocurrency or Bitcoin. It's only worth a value depending upon the day on the market. So I think the fact that people weren't bringing up the Canadian ETF is a shame. I think that they should have started that conversation, because again, there's a lot of progress in other countries that are using these products, and people need to know that this is not a new thing. It's been around, and there's a history for it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I do. I mean, I'm very much of the not your keys, not your coins school. So I would strongly discourage people from putting money into an ETF if you have the option of buying Bitcoin directly and cold storing it and self-custodying it. So that I think would be the best option. But I can also see that, if you've got like a Roth IRA or something like that and you want to have exposure to Bitcoin, it's a great vehicle for doing that. So it does have some good practical applications as well. What would you, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I like the option though of the Bitcoin, because I know in my own personal journey in retirement, when I first started investing in an IRA, I didn't have access. I didn't have the ability to say, consider an altcoin, consider Bitcoin, consider something that for me is not risky, but for my financial advisor they might think, okay, it's risky. I didn't have those options. So the fact that I agree with you, I like being a miner versus, going through a third party. But if people at least have that ability, then they can choose. And right now, we haven't had the choice in the past.
Yeah, that's very true. What would you like to see happen from a regulatory perspective then, when you look across the globe at some of the regions that are doing a really good job of it? Like, what kind of regulatory frameworks or legal frameworks do you think are conducive to supporting innovation while protecting consumers and making sure that things are done in the right way? Do you have any thoughts about specific rules that you really like?
Yeah, I think that we need to be looking at more of the economic zone model, the sandbox model, to have companies be encouraged to experiment in a professional business way. And also for the consumers, the KYC, know your customer, I think is really important, because then the company knows who they are and where they are. But I don't think, and I know that this idea was floated around and I'm not a fan of it. I don't think that this type of investment should be restricted or relegated just to accredited investors. I think that, that really frightens me if people are saying, well, someone who doesn't have a certain income level should not have access to this. I think we all need to have the ability to choose, experiment, fail, and succeed. And the only way that you learn how to invest is by losing money. Obviously, you don't want to put a lot in, but if you're just learning something, it's like riding a bike. You're going to fall down a few times, and then you learn, okay, don't do it this way. I didn't look at the candles right. I didn't do this. Again, there's always tech vocabulary and skills. And yes, there are certain platforms when you're trading or learning that are play, but sometimes what's on the computer play platform is not the real life market. So, and sometimes it is, but the thing is that I'm more about, maybe I'm more libertarian. Maybe I think that people need to have the freedom to choose and experiment within the wisdom of the fact that there could be loss. I am concerned that sometimes the public is not savvy and they rush into things in America. And I'm a lawyer, I'm an educator, but sometimes we rush too fast to the lawsuit side simply because we made a mistake ourselves. So, I mean, if we don't know how to ask the questions, now granted, someone can be scamming you too, but if we don't know how to ask the questions and we make a mistake, then it might be on us and not on the platform. So there's a lot of factors here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. I think the when you sort of delve into this world, that kind of self-sovereign training comes into play, where a lot of the focus is on making sure that you can be self-sovereign and that you're sort of responsible for your own finances. And I think it was interesting actually because I was interviewing somebody this morning for the podcast. Just we were talking about the she's a death doula, but we were talking about like kind of confronting death and thinking about how you manage your life. And we were just sort of saying about how everything gets so outsourced these days. So there are all these kind of guardrails put around things. And what happens is people just stop understanding stuff or stop learning because they're not self-sufficient and they're constantly outsourcing. So it's interesting. I think the impact for certainly, I think many people that get into the Bitcoin space, when you start understanding that self-sovereign nature of the money and the self-custody, it really changes your relationship to a lot of things, not just Bitcoin. So it's quite fascinating.
I'm glad you brought, or I'm interested to hear more about the person that you interviewed, but from the perspective of your family and situations that can happen, because I'm a single mom and also a lawyer, one of my pet passion areas is making sure everyone has a will and making sure that the family knows how to access your coins. I know everyone is concerned about privacy and everything, but if we are creating generational wealth online and your family doesn't know, then you've defeated the purpose, because if something happens to you medically or otherwise, and they don't know how to access it, which it can be difficult because it might be on your phone, it might be on the computer, it might be authenticated through an email, there's just different ways. I think that this is something that everyone who owns a digital asset needs to immediately take ownership of talking to the family about, okay, these are our assets. This is how we, access it. It's no different than knowing who your mortgage company is or who your healthcare provider is, again, and even making sure your accountant and your lawyer have that information, maybe not your seed words, but know where they are. So in case something has to happen, especially if you have minor kids. I mean, I created I pop everything on Amazon, but I created a best 5-minute crypto wealth organizer for my daughter, who's now 27. But when she was younger, I wanted her to know how to do this, again, because we need to teach others, and the best way of financially knowing how to take charge of your own life is also knowing where your paperwork is. Even though I'm a procrastinator in many ways, this type of, like doing my taxes and having a box of receipts and then organizing them at the end of the year, these are critically important documents that everyone, I think, needs to have.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. I wanted to shift gears a little bit then and talk about your fiction books, because that's a really interesting area that you've delved into, and it's quite opposite to your work as a lawyer, and all of this kind of very formal stuff. Can you sort of touch on how you got into writing and then writing about Bitcoin
Yeah,
or
so
crypto?
well, yeah, no, it's Bitcoin. So I wrote the books. It's a series called the Bitcoin Cinderella, and right now the second book is called the Bitcoin Cinderella and the Seven Dwarves. And there are two more books coming out. It is like Harry Potter and the blockchain. It's the Bitcoin Cinderella and the King Sans Treasure of Bermuda, and then the Bitcoin Cinderella and the True Stories of Women in Bitcoin, which we still need to schedule your interview. And and so being in the education space and the law space, it kind of provided me two different pathways of looking at things, and also being a mom. I realized that kids were gaming, like my daughter. I knew nothing about gaming until she started doing stuff, and I was investing, and she knew nothing about that. And there wasn't that cross communication. And then in the education space, I saw that there were a lot of tech things, but nothing that was kind of a gentle way to enter this area. So I decided to use the power of storytelling through the Cinderella story. And so the first story, Bitcoin Cinderella, the mom is actually a blockchain engineer and who works with Satoshi, who is the actual creator of Bitcoin. And the dad is a traditional banker. So there's a little bit of a clash there because they have different philosophy of life. And Cinderella ends up, the mom leaves to go into the metaverse, which she leaves a note for her daughter, though, saying, I'm going to see you again. And this is how you're going to find me. And she leaves her purse, which has like words in it and numbers, and Cinderella had no clue what it is. And so over the journey of the first story, she learns that that's actually a Bitcoin wallet. Those are seed words. And so in the traditional adventure, there's a ball. And so the ball happens in the metaverse for the prince, who's more new age-ish. The queen and king have it in their palace. And she gets kicked out of the metaverse with a timed NFT. So a lot of the vocabulary is built within. And also, I always say this in the book as well, don't give your seed words out to anyone. But in the book, the prince has 6 seed words and she has 6. And yes, I'm going to ruin the story for you guys. But anyway, the glass slipper, instead of glass slippers, the wallet comes together. And when the seed words are put together, and then it opens up. So that way they know that they're supposed to be. So, but there's a lot of other, magical things. So definitely, have fun with the story. And then she and the prince decide that they want to heat their new castle with Bitcoin and power it with solar. So they had to learn more about Bitcoin. And she's still on this adventure over this series to find her mom, which she will probably by the 10th book. But so she hops through the magic mirror and visits her cousin, Snow White, who's in El Salvador. And El Salvador is definitely, a country that has adopted Bitcoin as a currency. So that she learns about hard forks, soft forks, the whole history of Bitcoin Lightning, which is a second layer protocol for those that might not know. And so I did all this research and I was learning, even though I'm a minor, I really hadn't any clue about all this. So it was fascinating to me. So each book is, there's always QR codes to take you back to the online portals for more education. And each book has a different topic. So she's going to hop from one country to the other, learning about different things. There'll be a topic about the DAOs. There'll be a topic about, what other Web3 concepts, blockchain uses, digital world assets, everything that is happening in our online hybrid physical space. She's going to be exploring in a way that makes through fairy tale, but tech also. So I guess it's a new genre. Instead of historical fiction, it's historical tech. I don't know, but it's a fun write and hopefully a fun read for everyone to have a conversation to start the journey of exploring.
That's so fascinating. Did you have any experience in writing books before you started?
Yes, not formally. I mean, I was I do write blogs, and my happiness news factor blog, this last one that I wrote, I realized as I was writing, I tagged myself as an intuitive writer. So the Bitcoin Cinderella book was a very easy write. I mean, when the idea came to me, which was about 3 years ago, when I say an easy write, it wasn't like one day. It took a few weeks. But, again, the characters spoke. It was an easy flow. Now, the Bitcoin Cinderella and the Seven Dwarves was a whole different matter. because I knew I was using the Snow White theme, and because I had to do the tech research, I sort of knew that each of the dwarves was going to be a different name because they're mining Bitcoin. So instead of mining gold, they're mining Bitcoin. But I really didn't want it to be a tech book. So that really was like, it's pulling teeth. But that was more like a 3 month, long, because I had to go back over, I had to make, so hopefully people, are going to enjoy the read on that, but it's fun. And then the next one in Bermuda, she goes from the Snow White magical mirror to Bermuda through the Wingate, which is also a special portal that is supposed to generate prosperity and other cultural references. So it's fun for me because I get a chance to do research within a community culturally as well as business wise. And I'm anticipating, knock on wood, or not, that the Bermuda book is going to write itself. And then I have the exciting, journey of sharing everyone's personal stories and the true stories of women of Bitcoin. And that's going to be interesting just because of the diversity of the stories that everyone has experienced. So.
Yeah, it's actually amazing to me because when I started the podcast, I had this sense that there weren't that many women in this space. And then every day that goes by, I'm like, oh, there are tons. It's just nobody really hears from them. You've just got this very dominant group of voices, mostly male, who, are all on podcasts the whole time. They're talking about everything the whole time. And I was just like, oh, there's a lot more women actually than I'd expected. So I've been really pleasantly surprised just how many women I've been able to connect with, and just discovering the diversity of stuff that people are doing is incredible. Um, so
I
yeah,
agree.
it's been really fun.
Women are both in front of the scene as well as behind the scene. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to write the Bitcoin Cinderella, the True Stories of Women in Bitcoin, because I want to let not just girls, but any individual know that the power of dreaming, and also that you don't always start in one path and you end up in another path. And so the life is all about possibilities. And I know I've been really blessed with the ability to manifest that. Hasn't always been easy. And there's been, life struggles in terms of deciding, okay, I'm going to go out without that because I really want to do this. But, those are choices that you just have to decide, really, is this making you happy? Because we have one go around, and hopefully on that journey, you can also give back. And that's part of the reason why, as a lawyer, I'm really trying not to do anything that's a billable hour thing, because that really bothers me. I would rather focus on the service and helping people. And that's why my legal career has been very non-traditional, because I really want to just do things that resonate with me. Otherwise, I feel like it's a closed door. And if it's a closed door, we get dragged in screaming, and it just doesn't work.
What is it that you want to achieve at the end of this? Like, what's the North Star? Because you're kind of writing the kids' books, you're telling people stories, you're providing a resource and a wealth of information for people to use. Like, what's the end goal here?
So I am, currently teaching, which I'll be retiring this year, so I can focus just on this. There's so much. The Blockchain Legal Institute that I created is a centralized library of resources. So one of the, and it's really the umbrella for everything that I've been doing over the past 8 years. So I really want to develop that to be, right now it's subscription based, but my goal and hope is that it will end up being a public resource that will be underwritten by sponsors. So that way there can be an open source way to do this, and provide education to a variety of communities that don't always have access to this education. And that's one reason why, as much as I love being in the classroom, I want to step away from the school-based education so I can do more global education from the adult as well as youth, because the kids have a vision that we sometimes lose as we get older. And they always keep us young if we kind of feel their awe at the discovery of the moment when they learn something new. That aha moment is, priceless. So I guess the North Star for me would definitely be the success of BLI within a variety of communities. The book is translated into multiple languages. Right now it's Spanish, Creole, soon to be French, possibly Swahili.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I definitely want to make sure that the educational materials are culturally appropriate and blockchain rich with vocabulary. I never want to simplify it so much that people don't understand the tech side, but I definitely want to have them not be afraid of understanding what the vocabulary is, because just like every profession, there's academic vocabulary, there's everything, we all kind of have our lingo. And sometimes that scares people when they don't know what that means, because then they think, oh, there's a wall. But really, it should be accessible to everyone. And if we are going to be in the Bitcoin community or the other communities, if we're going to make sure that everyone is not bankless, and that we all have economic freedoms and are able to have, the roof over our heads, the food that we need, clean water, the education, then we have to look at this globally. And this is not piecemeal we're not piecemeal anytime soon, because you take a look at what happened with COVID. We all got shut down. We realized that, okay, we're in our home, our little box, but then we saw online the nature of community. We had people from different countries that we could see, I just remember the people singing from one balcony to the other, the people, having conversations, with their neighbors, even though they couldn't be close, people realized the power of communication and the importance of community. And I really want people to, we have a very fast-paced life in our world. We need to learn how to slow down, appreciate each moment, and be kind to ourselves. So, again, that's all part of I guess the mantra of what I'm trying to both do for me and those around me, sometimes successfully and sometimes not.
What do you teach at the moment? Are you just teaching a broad education spectrum or a specific discipline?
I'm dual certified in general education and special education, and currently I'm in the special education field, and I'm in charge of the department that I'm in for my school. And so at the moment, the grade that I've been assigned, even though in elementary school I've taught from K through 6, the grade that I'm working with right now are kindergartners. So
Oh.
I know they're so cute. And they're just so funny. I think about each of the kids, and one of my kids keeps saying, well, why? What's this? Why? What's this? And so you answer, and they're all about discovery. And another little friend is definitely bilingual, and so I don't speak Spanish, so I have to use my translator app to kind of help, because he's both languages he's learning. And but it's a fun time, and I know I'll miss being in the classroom, but I know I'll be able to kind of create different classrooms.
Yeah, that'd be incredible. It's great that you have that experience in teaching. I wanted to ask you, just to shift gears again, if what your thoughts are about women in this ecosystem, because you obviously get a lot of exposure to women in this space, but do you have any thoughts as to why there aren't as many women as men, and what's your thinking about how to address that, if we even need to address it?
I think we always need to address it. I think that that's why I wrote the Bitcoin Cinderella with strong women characters, to model for girls the fact that they can be in tech, they can be within a Bitcoin environment, they can be, it's just one example, but I know that it's like anything else. If you don't see the women, you don't necessarily think that you can model after them. So that's one challenge. And then I know I've been mentored by a lot of women and a lot of men, but we also need to, and we need to develop that give back system where we're always reaching behind to help educate the next person, because this definitely reminds me of me in elementary school, because when I started my blockchain journey about 8 years ago, I was at the kindergarten level. I might be at the 6th grade level now, but those that are actually doing the tech, creating the blockchain, the really deep dive in coding, that to me is like graduate school, because I haven't done a hackathon like that yet. So for me to look at all the code, even, when in my Bitcoin wallet, I'm looking at all these little numbers thinking, okay, that's a hash. Well, how does that work? That's why I bought a node, because I really wanted to see more of the tech and have hands-on. And I've had a lot of individuals help me with that. So I think we need to have more educational programs to expose. Sorry about that. Give me a sec. And I think that from the educational perspective, we just need to have more books, more webinars in multiple languages. So, I think that's the biggest challenge. And I know that there was some conversation on LinkedIn about women at conferences, that there might not be enough women to be speakers. There are enough women to be speakers. We also have to encourage women to not be afraid to take the stand, and because I remember when I first got my law degree, I did not want to go in the courtroom because I was nervous to stand up and to talk. And now, many years later, I keep thinking, okay, I understand that mindset for that time frame, but now I would have no problems getting in front of a judge and arguing a case. But it takes a different time period of your life sometimes. So I think we need to encourage women to speak, even if they are on multiple panels, so that way they're not the primary source, because it is hard to speak, but their voices need to be heard. So that's why I'm glad you started what you did, because you're giving access to women of a lot of different communities a voice, and I think that's really important.
Yeah, and I kind of, with the member platform, I wanted to connect women together as well, because I felt that many of them, they're on Twitter, but they don't really like using it and they don't tend to speak much on Twitter. So I wanted to create more of a closed community where they could actually interact with each other without having, the sort of external broader world being present. And just create content that was more specific to women, that they would jive with a bit more. But it's been really fascinating for me doing the podcast and talking to all these women, because I suddenly just discovered that they're everywhere. Like, they're everywhere and they're working on lots of interesting projects. And, a lot of them I consider friends now. We've been talking back and forth for months and working on stuff together, and they're mentors to me and advisors and all of that kind of stuff. So it really has struck me how rich and diverse the community is and how much stuff is going on. But I do think, to your point about the conferences, is that men tend to put themselves forward for these things and women don't. Um, and so I encourage the women on my platform. I'm like, this conference is coming up. If you're not already speaking, apply to be a speaker. Like, make sure that you put yourself forward for this, and so on. Because I just think that's how we get, more kind of interest and more traction. So yeah, I would encourage to note to any woman listening to this right now is apply to be a speaker at conferences, because you never know, and you probably have something really great to contribute. I have a friend actually who's a yoga teacher and a Bitcoiner, and she did on the platform, she did for us a Bitcoin yoga session. And her name is Alison Yancey. She's the founder of Optimal Wellness. So she's very deep into the whole wellness space. She runs retreats and is into all of this kind of health stuff. But I was really curious as to like how this might pan out, like what's a Bitcoin yoga session. But she basically spent some time doing meditative work with us and breathing, and then talking about how a lot of the principles of yoga tie in with a lot of the principles of Bitcoin, like the self-sovereignty, the non-violence, like all of that kind of stuff. And it was fascinating. And then she very kindly wrote a guest post for my blog, kind of reiterating that stuff in written form. And it never occurred to me. I mean, I'm a trained yoga teacher. I did the British Wheel of Yoga training and the Yoga Alliance training, and I taught yoga for about 7 years. Never once in my Bitcoin journey did it occur to me that like Bitcoin and yoga were related. And so I was like, wow, how much
A lot
other stuff am I missing?
too, because again, I guess the word that pops into my mind is the imposter syndrome. A lot of times we don't realize the knowledge that we have, and we don't give ourselves the credit for the learning that we've done and the fact that someone else might not have the same learning. So when I started to write the books, I realized, wow, over the past few years, I really have been a sponge. I have, taken in a lot of information, even though there's always more to know. But someone who's new, like the woman who came up to me at the Bitcoin conference in May of 2023, she was just starting her journey. So everything was brand new to her. She was like, a kindergarten child saying, wow. And that's how I felt when I went to my first Bitcoin conference. I had bought Bitcoin. This is, I guess, prior to me becoming a Bitcoin miner, or maybe I had already become a Bitcoin miner, but I hadn't gone to a conference. I walked the aisles and I saw in the exhibit hall all the businesses. And I thought, wow, this is huge. This is not what I thought. I always thought you just kind of, put it on a centralized exchange or whatever, I knew about the process. But, you finally realize the community of it, it's a lot bigger. And when we start our own personal journey and we start educating ourselves, someone else is always behind us. They're always starting their journey first, so and it is really important to realize that when you as a woman who's going on stage speaking, you will be inspiring someone else who might not have that same knowledge base, because your journey is a little bit farther along, or maybe not. There might be really experienced other women in the audience who are listening to you, but there might be a nugget that you're sharing that is their aha moment of something else. So I guess the reason why I'm saying this is never be afraid to take the stage, never be afraid of what you might say or not say. Never be afraid of making a mistake in what you say, because that happens all the time. That's why we have the edit button. But also, there's nothing that you can say that's going to be so detrimental. So just be yourself, be authentic, trust yourself, and share your light, basically.
Yeah, it's true, actually. In some ways, I think if people are sort of reticent to share their story, and I'm not saying they have to, but if they're reticent to, in a way, you're kind of keeping something that you could actually benefit somebody else with, like that path that you've trodden or that knowledge that you've gained. So yeah, it's definitely again, we'll just say it again in case anyone missed it. If you're a woman in this space, like please put yourself forward to join panels and speak at events, because we'd love to hear from you and we'd love to hear, what you're doing. Um, so what's next then? So you're working on like the Bitcoin Cinderella, you're working on the true stories of the women in Bitcoin. You've obviously got your hands full with your day job and your blockchain legal institute, but is there anything else on the horizon that you're planning on doing that you can share, or what are your next steps?
Yeah, so I'm actually doing some really exciting legal research. I've already kind of outlined it, so I'm going to start next week actually making calls, but I'm researching what's going on within our 50-state court system, and the types of resources that they're using to educate the judges, because I want to find out if there are gaps on what they need to know, not just by what the plaintiffs or defendants share, but where do they go to find out background, and not just from the cases that have been decided, but to understand the content, to understand the protocols, to understand what the community is, who the community is in the application, that type of thing. Because I think yes, the decisions of a case is based upon the facts of the case. But when you are deciding and looking at the facts of the case, you can't necessarily, you do it in isolation because that is one case, but you also do it with the understanding of what is the community. So I think it's important if the judges within the United States are not fully aware that, and I'm just not talking about being educated through media, then they need to have some background knowledge. And so that's research is going to be conducted, and at least phase one of it, because I know as we kind of do the research, it probably be like an onion that we're going to unpeel, and different phases will happen. But I'm really hoping to release the first part by September. And we are also doing, I really want to start, and so we are, the educational portal. So for continuing legal education, continuing education, and I'm not going to be the only talking head, so to speak. There are other individuals.
Oh, I see. So if lawyers in this space want to kind of upskill, they've got somewhere where they can go for further training. That's fantastic. What a great idea.
Yeah, exactly. And so there are other um, attorneys or experts in the content area who might not be attorneys that can provide workshops, so that way the continuing legal education for these attorneys can happen, and they can get credit for their bar associations and that type of thing. So so that's definitely things that we're doing this year, which is rewarding to me, because I do want to step into the adult education side.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Wow. What great work you're doing. I don't know how you find the time. I should probably ask you, like, how do you manage your time?
I use Google Calendar religiously. I have a system where I have different tasks that I organize by priority 1, 2, 3, or 4, and that way I can move it if I don't get it done from one day to the next. I'm also a constant list writer paper-wise, and my wall in my offices has a ton of lists for different projects. But I use it strategically, so that way I'm able to kind of collectively manage the time. And I do verticals in my head in terms of, the different projects have different verticals. And then within those projects, there's certain priorities and certain calendar timelines. But I also don't stress if I don't meet them, because I know that there's going to be something that happens during the day that's just going to throw off the entire schedule. And, again, so be it. It's sometimes things are out of your control. Like when my battery in my car died, well, that took up 3 hours. So, but again, the I'm lucky that I have the flexibility to do this. I know some individuals might not, because of family obligations or whatever. My daughter's, as I said, an adult now, so I have that luxury. But yeah, so time management, sometimes it overwhelms me, but then I just kind of rethink, okay, reset, rethink, and plan, and then just do bite sizes. So, again, I know what I want to accomplish, and it ends up always getting done.
Eventually.
And eventually, exactly.
It's funny, I do notice that. I feel like people who've had kids are a lot more chill about stuff and deadlines and things like that, because they're so experienced at handling the unexpected, shall we say.
You have to, and I think as a teacher, you see that too, because you have your curriculum you have to teach, but sometimes there's a group of kids that just need extra time to teach it. And you can't be rigid with the child, because the child is a precious little being that needs to know this information. So yes, there's always a collective organic system that you work within, but then there is being human and understanding how do you navigate your humanity.
Yeah, yeah. Very, very true. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Jacqui. This has been so interesting. I am uber impressed by everything that you've managed to achieve, and just the tenacity of learning this stuff and then being able to regurgitate it in a form that other people can understand. So thank you for all the amazing work. Thank you for existing, and much luck with all of this. I hope it goes really well, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how all these different projects turn out. So thank you.
And I appreciate being on. I appreciate, everyone who's in your community. And I think it's phenomenal, the safe space that you've created, so that way everyone can learn and blossom like a flower, So again, we all need that, because it takes everyone to help each other.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks so much, Jacqui. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks.